Okay, here's a fun way to think about this. Squeeze the whole history of Earth into one calendar year, and the planet forms on January 1st. The dinosaurs die out on the evening of December 26th. And all of recorded human history, the pyramids, every war, the internet, you watching this video right now fits into the last 12 seconds of December 31st. 12 seconds out of an entire year. There's a lot packed into the next 30 minutes. Planets are going to crash into each other, oxygen is going to nearly wipe out life on Earth, the planet's going to freeze over more than once, and at least 5 separate times, almost everything alive is going to get wiped out. Alright, let's just start at the beginning. 4.6 billion years ago, there's no Earth yet. Just a huge spinning disk of dust and gas around a star that had only just switched on our Sunday. And slowly, that dust starts sticking together. First into grains of sand, then into rocks, then into chunks the size of mountains. Gravity's stubborn like that, and pretty quickly, cosmically speaking, basically instantly, a protoplanet forms out of the mess. Scientists named it Theia. And around the same time, a still very rough, unfinished Earth takes shape too. And then, probably the single craziest event in the entire history of our solar system happens. A planet roughly the size of Mars, that same Theia slams full speed into the young Earth. The impact is so violent, it blasts chunks of both planets' mantles straight out into space. Out of that wreckage, the moon eventually forms. Yeah, that thing you look at in the sky every night is, basically, leftover debris from an ancient car crash in space. And honestly, you should be grateful for that crash. Without the moon stabilizing Earth's axial tilt, the climate would have swung around so wildly that complex life probably never would have had a shot. For the first few 100 million years, Earth looks a lot like hell. And that's not just a figure of speech. Geologists actually named this period the Hadean, after the underworld. The surface is solid lava. There's nothing close to breathable air, and meteorites keep hammering the place almost non-stop. Little by little, the planet starts cooling off. The molten surface hardens into solid crust, and the whole time, volcanoes are pumping massive amounts of water vapor into the atmosphere non-stop. Once things cool down enough, that vapor starts condensing and Earth gets absolutely drenched. Not for a day, not for a week, possibly for thousands of years straight, without a single break. That's how the first oceans show up. The planet's still getting pelted by asteroids. This stretch is called the Late Heavy Bombardment, but now there's water. And water, it turns out, is basically the one ingredient everything interesting from here on out is going to need. And somewhere down there, in total darkness at the bottom of these first oceans, near cracks spewing out hot mineral-rich water, something happens that's going to change absolutely everything. Life shows up. Honestly, how life actually got started the first time is still one of the biggest unsolved questions in science. But around 3.8 billion years ago, some simple chemical compounds fall together into something that can copy itself. The first organisms are about as basic as it gets, single-celled things that don't even have a nucleus yet. We call them prokaryotes. Some of the clearest early traces of life we find in ancient rock are stromatolites, layered mats built up by colonies of bacteria. Not the most thrilling thing to look at, I'll admit. But these guys are about to flip the planet's chemistry upside down, because among these bacteria, cyanobacteria show up the first organisms to figure out photosynthesis. They take sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and out comes oxygen. Sounds harmless, right? Except for a planet where nearly everything alive is used to living without oxygen, this is basically the equivalent of slowly pumping poison gas into the air. By around 2.4 billion years ago, so much oxygen's built up that a real ecological disaster hits scientists, literally call it the Great Oxidation Event. For anaerobic microbes, the ones that die the instant oxygen touches them, this is basically the end of the world. A massive chunk of everything alive at the time goes extinct. There's also a theory that all that new oxygen destroyed atmospheric methane, which had been acting like a blanket, keeping the planet warm. The result? Earth freezes over almost entirely. This period gets the nickname Snowball Earth, glaciers possibly reaching all the way down to the equator. The planet spends hundreds of millions of years like that, freezing, thawing, freezing again, and through all of it, life just doesn't quit. It waits. Next big step. Cells learn to team up instead of going it alone. The first multicellular organisms appear. And around 570 million years ago, the oceans fill up with these strange, flat, leaf-like or mat-like creatures, the Ediacaran fauna. Honestly, they look like something halfway between a plant and an alien. Then, around 540 million years ago, the Cambrian Explosion hits, and in a geological blink of an eye, something like 20 to 25 million years, an enormous variety of life forms just shows up. Shells, eyes, jaws, legs evolution basically hits fast forward. Nearly every major animal group alive today traces its roots back to right here. And this is exactly when things get properly brutal. The first real predators show up, an arms race kicks off, and spoiler, it never really stops. For hundreds of millions of years, all of life stays underwater. Land, meanwhile, is just a wasteland, not one blade of grass anywhere. But around 470 million years ago, the first plants, something close to primitive mosses, start creeping onto the shorelines. Insects follow not long after. And then, around 375 million years ago, one of the genuinely coolest moments in the whole story of evolution happens. A fish called Tiktaalik, with sturdy, elbow-like fins, hauls itself up into the shallows and takes the first steps onto land. Tiktaalik isn't quite a fish anymore, but it's not really a land animal either. It's a living in-between. And pretty much every backboned creature that's ever walked the Earth since you included traces back to something a lot like it. By now, the continents have all jammed together into one supercontinent, Pangaea. Then, 252 million years ago, the single worst day in Earth's history happens. Enormous volcanic eruptions in Siberia dump so much carbon dioxide and toxic gas into the air that up to 90% of ocean species and around 70% of land species go extinct. Scientists call it the Great Dying. It's the biggest mass extinction in the planet's entire history. Earth came within a hair of ending up completely lifeless. But life crawls back once again, and whatever ecological niches got left empty end up filled by a brand new group, dinosaurs. For roughly the next 165 million years, they own the land completely, everything from tiny feathered hunters to 100-foot giants. Then, 66 million years ago, a rock roughly 6 miles wide comes screaming out of the sky and slams into what's now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The blast is more powerful than billions of nuclear weapons combined. Tsunamis, wildfires everywhere, and then a dust cloud that blots out the sun for years. 75% of all species vanish. Every single non-avian dinosaur gone. But like so often happens in Earth's history, somebody's disaster turns into somebody else's opening. While the dinosaurs were in charge, mammals were small and pretty forgettable, living in the shadows, quite literally. But the moment those giant reptiles disappear, a whole world opens up. Over the next several million years, mammals diversify, spread out, and end up filling nearly every empty niche the planet has to offer. Somewhere in that lineage of mammals is a branch of primates. And around 6 or 7 million years ago, that branch splits in two. One side eventually leads to modern chimpanzees, the other leads to us. Our species, Homo sapiens, shows up in Africa around 300,000 years ago. On the scale of Earth's whole history, that's basically the last split second. Remember our 365-day calendar? We show up on the evening of December 31st, maybe 12 seconds before midnight. From here, everything speeds up in a way that's honestly kind of terrifying. About 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, humans figure out agriculture. Permanent settlements pop up, then cities, then writing, then empires. The Industrial Revolution, electricity, people flying into space, the internet. All of it less than 300 years out of 4.6 billion. Back on our 365-day calendar, all of recorded human history fits inside the last 12 seconds of the year, and you're watching this video in pretty much the last
genuinely
millisecond
strange
of
part.
that.
In those few remaining seconds, a single species US has managed to become a geological force capable of reshaping an entire planet's climate. Scientists are seriously debating whether to name the current geological epoch after us, the Anthropocene. Billions of years from now, the sun's going to swell up, and it'll probably end up swallowing Earth entirely. But that's still a long way off, around 5 billion years from now, which is nearly as long as the planet's entire history up to this point. For now, though, we've got this one planet, the only one anyone's ever found in the entire universe, where a random collision of dust eventually turned into oceans, forests, dinosaurs, and finally, something capable of looking back at all of it and telling the whole story in 10 minutes. If you liked this trip through 4.6 billion years, hit like, subscribe. Maybe next time we get into how all of this actually ends.